Hey everyone, I finished watching the next episode of Time Force Traitor. This is a decent episode, but it's, it feels redundant, coming after Jen's revenge. This episode hits a lot of the same beats that episode did. It's a very similar plot, as well as being a similar plot to the last race. Let's see, the episode starts off with the Rangers are out doing some job, there's some nice little character moments, and then Jen notices there's some ominous spy watching them. But she seems to just shrug it off and not worry about it, which is weird. And it was the type of thing. This whole episode is filled with scenes that made me think, oh, they're doing that because the Sentai did it. But I've seen Time Ranger, and this didn't really feel familiar, so I went back to refresh my memory. I watched the episode of Time Force that this was adapted from, which was easy because it was only one episode. The monster, the plot, both come from this one episode. So I watched that episode, and none of the weirdness in the Power Rangers episode had anything to do with anything in the Sentai. It's just weird stuff that they made up for Power Rangers. Or they took from a completely separate Sentai episode. That happens sometimes too, but it's hard to tell which one, and I'm not going to go and watch all of Time Ranger again just to confirm this. Anyway, let's see, that night the Rangers are baking cookies, and there's a little conversation that Wes and Jen have about how in the future they don't have junk food, which I find really hard to believe. I don't know. I don't think that's realistic. I think Futurama is a bit more realistic, where the future is basically just now with more technology. I think that's more like what the future would actually be like. I don't think we're gonna abolish junk food. Unless Jen is talking about, like, this one community or something that she comes from. Who knows? Anyway, they're out of... Oh yeah, she accidentally knocks over something. She says she'll go out and get it herself. She goes out to get it herself, and then she encounters that weird spy dude who was watching them earlier. He chases her. They get into a brief little scuffle. She makes it back to the clock tower. She contacts the future, and she knows who this guy was. She tells them it was Steelix. Steelix's escaped. I don't know why she bothers telling the future, because they don't really do that for any other monster, mutant, whatever. Why is this guy so special? I don't know. Whatever, anyway. She tells the Rangers what his story, or does Lucas? I don't remember. It kind of... Whatever. Let's see. This dude, Steelix, was Jen's partner, but then he betrayed Time Force and started selling secrets to the bad guys, including Rancic. So then Jen ratted him out, and he was put in cryostasis, and now he blames Jen for that, even though it was his own stupid fault, and he wants revenge on her. And then Jen also reveals that he stole her morpher, which seems like something she should have said a lot earlier. So the next day, the Rangers, they set up a plan to catch Steelix. They're all in disguise. They all have, like, this little mock thing set up where, let's see, they're all walking around. I don't know exactly how this is supposed to lure out Steelix. Oh, and this is actually a thing that I think did come from the Sentai. They just didn't really think it through too well. In the Sentai, Steelix's counterpart is an assassin, and, let's see, he's part of some secret organization. So the Rangers set up a mock assassination attempt to, like, lure him out, and so they can infiltrate the organization. In here, they just all dress up in disguise and stand around, and for some reason that's supposed to lure out Steelix. Which it kind of does, but I don't know, whatever. Anyway, Jen hears Steelix's voice, and then she goes to follow it, and somehow Wes loses track of her. She didn't walk that far, she went like a few feet, whatever. Anyway, she sees this little box, then it, like, this little jack-in-the-box thing starts turning, then it pops open, and a little jack-in-the-box with Steelix's head pops out, and tells her that he wants to meet her alone at this location, blah blah blah, and then, like, the outside of the jack-in-the-box thing disintegrates, but it's still there, along with the box. Yeah, that was weird. That was the weirdest thing in this episode that I thought, Oh, that definitely came from the Sentai, but it didn't, or at least not from that episode that this is adapting. Maybe this was in another Sentai episode? It really feels like a Sentai thing. I'm sure I've seen like something very similar to this at some point in a Sentai show, so I don't know, maybe the writers, Chip Lin and Jackie Markand or something, saw that in some old Sentai episode and they were like, ooh, that's a cool idea, we should utilize that in Power Rangers at some point, and I don't know, or maybe this was a prop they had? Who knows, whatever. So anyway, Jen keeps the information that Steelix gave her a secret from the other Rangers because, again, she hasn't learned anything from Jen's revenge. Whatever. So then she goes alone to meet him, and let's see. She actually holds her own against Steelix unmorphed. It's a really impressive fight scene. And then, let's see. She's able to get the morpher back from Steelix, she morphs, and then immediately loses. Her ranger powers were completely pointless in this episode. As soon as she morphs, she starts to lose. And then Steelix takes out this spray thing, sprays her in the face, and it knocks her out through her helmet. What good did morphing do here? This Imagine if this was like the pilot for Power Rangers. It would make people just wonder, so why do they transform if it just makes them weaker? Whatever, anyway. She faints, the Rangers show up because, oh yeah, Circuit detected her morpher turning on. Has that ever been a thing before? I think that's a thing that's only in this one episode. Maybe it comes back later, but I think this is the first time that happens. I don't know, maybe they made an update to Circuit so he can do that, whatever. The Rangers show up, they chase Steelix away, Wes stays behind to check on Jen, but that poison gas stuff that Steelix sprayed in her face has turned her evil. She comes up with evil glowing eyes and attacks Wes, and then, let's see. Wes is eventually able to get through to her, and she breaks the spell or whatever this is. The other Rangers are fighting off Steelix and losing. Like, was Steelix just holding back a lot when he was fighting unmorphed Jen? Like, in the Sentai version, this would actually make some sense, because in the Sentai version, Steelix, his whole thing wasn't he wanted to get revenge on the Pink Ranger. He was in love with the Pink Ranger and was stalking her, and he wanted to, like, kidnap her and keep her as a prisoner. And he didn't want to hurt her, quotes. So anyway, the other Rangers are fighting with Steelix. Then Jen and Wes show up. Jen's okay, and they join the fight against Steelix. Eric shows up, and there's a weird little bit where the Rangers are like, Eric, what are you doing here? I mean, maybe this is the property of someone who's, like, with the Silver Guardians. Adoy. Wes, are you brain dead? Whatever. Anyway, let's see, they're fighting with Steelix. Steelix reveals he has a DNA patch. He pulls it off. Oh, and this is something that was kind of weird. Throughout the episode, I was looking at Steelix trying to remember, because I couldn't remember from, like, when I was a kid or whenever when I watched this. Is Steelix a mutant? Because I was looking for the DNA patch. I didn't see it. Usually it's on one of the mutant's legs. So I was watching his legs, and I didn't see the patch. And then I see, oh, it's on his arm. They did a good job of, like, covering it up. Like, he doesn't really go out of his way to show it or anything. It's just mainly there at the end. So I'm wondering if in the Power Ranger version, initially, they weren't going to have him be a mutant? Who knows? I think it would have been better if he wasn't a mutant. Like, it would give some variety to the type of villains that they fight. But whatever, he's a mutant, he grows, standard Megazord fight. He gets put back into cryostasis at the end. The Megazord fight for this really felt like back in Lightspeed Rescue when they would have a plot going on and then the monster would grow, they'd get the Megazords, and the fight with the Megazord just felt completely, like, obligatory. Like, the only reason it's here is because it's Power Rangers and we need a Megazord fighting a monster. It wasn't there because, like, there was a build-up to this fight or anything. It's just it needs to be there because the footage is available. That's what this felt like. It was really unfortunate because the rest of the episode is okay, even with the weirdness, and also, like, this kind of forgets Jen's revenge, or at least Jen forgets what she learned in that episode. So anyway, the Rangers go back to the clock tower, they finish making their cookies, and they take a bite of them and realize Jen screwed them up and they taste horrible. Jen's like, what? And then she eats one, blah! And then it cuts to the future, we see that weird, mysterious guy with the sunglasses who sends back the shadow winger, whatever the shadow thing is called. The time shadow, that's what it's called. So anyway, he's talking to some other guy, and he says, the future is shifting. It's time for me to become involved. And then dramatic music, then to be continued, whatever. Okay. What's he mean by the future is shifting? Does he mean the future is changing? I mean, yeah. It's to be expected with something like this happening. Now, in the comic book, Sins of the Future, it implies that when the Rangers went back in time and changed the past, that's what brought Alex back to life, Jen's fiance. Spoilers. But it changed his personality, and now he's a different person. And spoilers, next episode or whatever is going to be all about him showing up and he's suddenly a big jerk. And Jen realizes, oh, he's a big jerk. I don't actually like him anymore. And, like, I don't know. I just figured there was a part of him that she hadn't. I don't know. I'll talk about it when I get to that episode. But yeah, this is a good episode. There's a few things I think would have made it better. Like, if Steelix hadn't actually been a mutant, I think that would have strengthened the story a bit. It would have been easy enough to do. Most of his scenes are American footage. And the few Japanese footage scenes, you don't even see the DNA patch on his arm. So I think it would have been really easy to just rewrite this to be him not being a mutant. Then it's just a little thing. I don't know. It's just a little nitpicky thing I thought of. Yeah, not much else to say about this one. It's a decent episode, and if Jen's revenge hadn't, like, happened, like, if that hadn't been an episode, I'd feel a lot better about this one. But the problem is this one copies and repeats so much from Jen's revenge and also The Last Race. Although I think Last Race was a little better, because the villain wasn't just two-dimensional, he, like, thinks about what he had done and he reforms. It's very quick. He does a 180, like, he goes from, man, I don't care about anybody but myself, to, oh no, I could have hurt those kids. I deserve to be in prison. Where, like, it's a very quick turnaround, but for Power Rangers, like a 22-minute episode, it works okay. For Steelix, he's just a jerk all the way through. I don't know. In the Japanese version, the Time Ranger version, it's really interesting watching that one alongside the Power Rangers episode, because in that one, he's a bit more of a despicable character in different ways than he is in Power Rangers. In Power Rangers, he's all about greed. He wants money, and then, like, when he's put in prison, his mind shifts to he just wants revenge on Jen. Whereas in the Japanese version, his goal is always, I want the Pink Ranger to be mine and no one else's. There's a scene when, he knocks Jen over, or the Pink Ranger, I can't remember her name now, and the other Rangers come over to her to help her, and he's like, who are all these men you're with? You're mine! It's freaking ridiculous, but, I don't know, it works in its own way. I like the Power Ranger episode better. I think the Power Ranger episode is a bit more streamlined and focused than the Japanese one, which kind of, I don't know, wanders around a bit, but that's partly because it has a longer runtime. Anyway, I'm rambling now, so that's it for this one. See ya.